As of 6 a.m. this morning, they have 2.02 million reported power outages. The amount of water that's been rising and will likely continue to rise today, even as the storm is passing, is basically a 500-year flood event.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis held a briefing explaining that 2 counties have been knocked off the grid at this point after Hurricane Ian made landfall. The governor says that he'll be asking the federal government for assistance, and we're currently waiting to hear from President Biden and FEMA about their plan for storm relief efforts. Well, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for the news at noon. I'm Mark Hall. We're following Tropical Storm Ian this afternoon. This is a live look at Orlando, and Ian made landfall yesterday as a hurricane. And although it's gotten less intense, the storm continues on a path towards the Carolinas and the DMV. Meteorologist Damon Matson is here. And Damon, can you break down what's happening right now with Ian?
Yeah, Mark, indeed. This is still a storm that is causing a lot of issues, even now that it has weakened down to tropical storm status, still dumping a lot of rainfall, and we have that threat for the wind and the surge in some locations. You see the center there of Ian, definitely not what it was yesterday, but it's pulling away from Florida back out over the open waters of the Atlantic before it does take a turn back toward South Carolina and then eventually continues its track off to the north. So what impacts will this storm bring to those locations, and what are we going to see here in the DMV? We'll have a check on all of that for you coming up here in just a bit.
Okay, Damon, thank you. And speaking of impacts, we're surveying the damage in Florida this afternoon, specifically in downtown Fort Myers and White Little, with our sister station WFLA has a look at what the storm has destroyed so far in the Sunshine State.
We are getting our first glimpse of the sunshine here this morning, which is a welcome sight here for Southwest Floridians waking up to all this damage. What you're hearing behind me is a fire alarm that's been going off for hours now, and this boat, the force of the storm surge pushed it into these apartment buildings here, and one lady told me it sounded like a gunshot every time that the boat would bang into the stairwell here in the patio on the second floor. There are several cars back there. As far as search and rescue efforts go, Texas Task Force 1 deployed here to Florida. They will be part of the team looking for people who tried to ride out the storm in their homes. Lee County Sheriff saying that the fatalities from Hurricane Ian just in this county could be in the hundreds. So certainly some grim news out this morning. As far as getting power back on, that is a priority, as much of the county is off the grid in terms of electricity and then also water. There's a boil water notice that came out on our phones last night and again this morning. It says drink bottled water or boil your water until further notice. So we really don't know the extent of the impacts to the infrastructure right now, but we expect to find that out as the day goes on. We'll send it back to you.
Well, this may look like a river, but it's actually a street in Sanibel, Florida. Southwest portion of the state is dealing with heavy flooding, and this time-lapse shows just how much water is filling the streets. Local police have gotten several calls from people trapped in their homes, and there are even reports of a causeway collapse on Sanibel Island. Well, happening now, D.C. police are raising the stakes for information on a man accused of shooting at officers. There are now a $55,000 reward for information that leads to an arrest. Avery Miler is suspected of killing 25-year-old R.E.A. Wolf in southeast D.C. in August. Police found Miler Tuesday, but they lost him after they say he fired shots at officers. Right now, police are worried that he's a serious threat to the public.
Now, in this case, this suspect had no regard for anybody's life, had no regard for the safety of our communities. In broad daylight, early in the morning when people are going to work, kids are going to school, he decided it was okay to pull a firearm and just discharge it recklessly in the direction of uniformed officers. That's not acceptable here in the district in any community, and we're not going to tolerate that.
Again, Miler considered armed and dangerous, and police encourage you to contact them if you know where Miler is or if you see him. Well, developing now, police working to piece together a Union Station shooting that shut down the evening commute. Several police departments came together on the west end of Union Station yesterday. An Amtrak spokesperson tells us that one person suffered a minor foot injury and another is in custody. The news shocked passengers who said that this was an unusual thing to happen in the area.
It's really sad. You know, this is one of the places we don't expect a shooting, but I guess nowadays it can happen anywhere. So I'm just going to be careful.
It's a little surprising. I hope to hear that everything is okay. Hope no one was injured.
Yeah, it's very disruptive. Union Station is a busy hub for both visitors and people living in the DMV. According to the station's website, more than 40 million people pass through a year. Well, new this afternoon, getting out of Russia. The United States Embassy in Russia is urging Americans to leave the country following President Putin's order for 300,000 reservists to join the war in Ukraine. In a security alert yesterday, the embassy said that Russia may prevent U.S. citizens from leaving the country and enlist dual nationals into military service. Now, while the embassy said that Americans should flee by car since flights are inaccessible, they added that Americans should make independent arrangements to leave the country since they will be limited in their ability to help.